Okay, this is a hard video to start. If you liked me before watching this video, I can almost guarantee you are not gonna like me by the end. Okay, so warning, this is a very dark and heavy video about drug addiction and where some of the most embarrassing or lowest moments my drug addiction took me. I know there's already a lot of dark and heavy things going on in the world right now. So if you can't handle that, I get it. I understand. I will see you in my next video. Okay, so for everybody who's still here, if you're new, my name is Jackie. I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, 6+ years clean. Basically, I started off abusing. I'm a polyaddict, which means I was addicted to more than one drug at one time. I started with designer drugs and I slowly bottomed out, becoming an IV user, and I was injecting meth on a daily basis for several years before finally bottoming out. I struggled with drug addiction for 14 years. Okay. Today I'm talking about meth-induced psychoses, which I experienced it many times, and let me read you a definition of what a meth-induced psychosis is. Okay, a psychosis is where a person perceives stimuli or has thoughts that are not based in any sort of external reality. Under meth-induced psychosis, your family member may have delusions such as believing they are dead, believing they are under constant watch of authorities like the FBI or the police, even believing others can hear their thoughts. They may have visual or auditory hallucinations. They may be seeing or hearing things that aren't actually there, claiming to hear you say things you've never actually said. Now, by that definition, I lived in a meth psychosis. I existed in a meth psychosis. That's not the definition that I'm going off of for today's video's purposes. I'm going off of this definition. During meth-induced psychosis, a person may develop delusions, hallucinations, paranoia, and violent behavior. These states may make it difficult for a person to separate their perceptions from what is real. It can also make them dangerous to themselves and those around them. Okay, that is the definition we're going to be going off of for the purpose of this video. We're going to talk about a meth-induced psychosis that I experienced. A little context, the person I was with at the time when I was using these extreme amounts of meth, one, I lived with my dealer who at this time in my life was my best friend, and how depressing is that to say out loud? That my best friend at the time was a dealer, because that's just how isolated I was from anybody that loved or cared about me. That was my best friend at the time. And at other times when the dude I was with was released, he was who I was hanging out with and living with. He had been using this substance for most of his life. This was his drug of choice. For me, it wasn't, but because I was using with him, I was using high amounts, and I built up quite the tolerance for it, I guess. But in a way, I was using in a very risky and unsafe way, because it's almost like I'm going from 0 to 60 real quick. Like now I'm using on your level, and I don't think that my body adjusted very well to that. And so I was never somebody that enjoyed, like the tweak is what it's called. After you inject meth, there's the initial rush, and that's all I liked about it, was the initial rush. Once that rush wore off, and we're talking like it could wear off in like minutes. It was just like that initial rush. Once those first few minutes went away, then you're left with the tweak, which lasts for hours and hours and hours. And I wasn't your typical tweaker. I didn't want to go clean stuff. I didn't want to talk endlessly. Like, I was a very chill type personality, but this made me the complete opposite of that. And it was like I couldn't make sense of why, why my mind was doing all these weird things, why all of a sudden I felt like a complete different person, why I couldn't slow my thoughts down, why it was like my body felt one way and my mind felt another way, and I couldn't get the two to sync up. And I loved the rush of it so much. I would continue to deal with like the tweak of it, and I would just try to find things that could occupy my time so that once that wore off, I was ready for the next hit. And it became a very vicious cycle because my personality is prone to violence. I was a violent drunk, and I was also like a mellow drunk, so it just was like depended on how I was at the moment, who I was hanging out with, the circumstances, and all these things sort of tied together. But I was somebody that acted very irrationally, that had a bad temper, that couldn't control my emotions. And so you kind of put all these pieces together, and then now you have somebody that is into a meth-induced psychosis, and it's kind of a recipe for disaster. So on this particular day, I was going over to my girl's house. We'll call her Tasha. So I'm going over to go hang out with Tasha and her dude cells, and I wasn't over there to pick up anything. I was just over there as a friend to hang out and smoke with them. They didn't inject, they just smoked, and that's all we ever did was we hung out, we smoked, we chilled. They were creative type people too, and those are the type of people that I got along with well when I was like on the tweak end of it, because we could, we could write songs, or we could sing, or we could dance, or we could, I would draw. That's the type of thing that I like to do, and I kind of irritated the type of people that wanted to clean and like do all this other stuff. Like I wasn't interested in that, and it kind of pissed them off that I just wanted to like be an artist, basically be creative. And so when I found people like this was like my people in that world. And I just remember always having very chill, fun experiences when I went over to dude's house. We'll call him Adrian. And this particular day, I just remember walking into the garage. For whatever reason, I was by myself, and I just noticed like he had a lot of tools. It looked like he maybe fixed things. I think maybe he was into fixing cars. Maybe he was into, I don't know, maybe he was into selling stolen car parts. Who knows? You just never know. But I figured, no, his main thing was like he sold or whatever. So he probably just likes to tinker in here and has some sort of hobby. And then I remember not thinking much about it, and then I opened this door to my left, and I walk in, and all I see is shelves and shelves, like 3 shelves full of nothing but electric saws. I don't know if that's what they're really called. They're the circular saws. They have the circular saw blade, and they're pretty easy to operate, just like a bunch of power tools, basically. But the fact that it was nothing but electric saws, like, that's what set off this trip in my mind. And I just remember being like, oh shit, I'm about to be on some really crazy shit in here. And I just remember feeling this like sense of impending doom, like, okay, like we need to figure out what we're gonna do. Like now it's just you against them, It looks like whatever game they have set up here, they want everybody to take one of these. So I'm gonna go ahead and select mine, and then I'm gonna go find a spot to like post up. And so that's what I did. I grabbed one, and then I just calmly went in the other room where everybody was hanging out. I went in the very back corner. I'm a fan of corners. I like to be in a corner. I feel safe in a corner. So I picked a corner which had the bar, which had the alcohol, which was probably not a coincidence. And that way I could just sit there, I could continue to drink, but I could also feel like if anybody tried to come at me, I could defend myself. The one I chose had like a cord, so I plugged it in. And then I just remember the bar being like here, and I remember at first everybody was kind of amused with like what I was doing, kind of thinking like that I was just fucking around and shit. And so they were kind of amused or thought it was kind of funny. And then I remember a few people would sit at the bar, and I would just kind of have like a line in my mind of like, if you cross this line, I'm taking this saw and I'm just going straight down the line, and I don't care what's in that line. If it's your face, it's your face. I'm telling you right now. And I remember telling them, listen, do not cross this line. Nobody come any closer to me. Like, I wanted my little personal space, and I didn't want anybody to come within it, because as soon as they came within it, I felt threatened. I felt like I was in danger. I felt like this was a life or death situation, and this is the meth psychosis, because it's like, if you think of it from the external point of view, they weren't afraid of me. They were amused by like this trip that I was on. They were kind of laughing about it, like thinking that I was joking, but in my mind, I was ready to take this razor straight through their face if they came any closer to me. So it was like we were on two different wavelengths. And in a way, it was a good thing that I was surrounded by people that maybe other than Tasha that were more dangerous than myself, because they could sort of like talk me down or sort of diffuse the situation, instead of in a situation where maybe there might have been somebody that was afraid, and then they're acting out of fear and I'm acting out of fear, and then it becomes a full-blown situation. What ended up happening is I ended up just feeling like this intense, like hyper vigilant feeling, just like I'm like overly aware of my surroundings. I'm like on this hyper vigilant level that I'm just starting to feel like I can't maintain it. Like, I can't stay on this level forever. Like, this is exhausting. Nothing, I keep feeling like somebody's gonna come at me and nobody's coming at me, and like the external situation isn't matching what's happening in my head, what's happening with my instincts. I'm feeling something that isn't playing out, and so it's becoming exhausting, like that I can't make sense of it. That Adrian's like, dude, put it down, like, what are you doing? You're tripping. And I'm like, oh no, like, you're tripping, like everybody's tripping, you're all fucking tripping. You think I don't know what's fucking happening here? You think I don't know what you're setting me up for? And they're like, you are crazy, like you're acting crazy right now. And nobody could ration with me, right? Because I'm in that psychosis. And so what ended up happening was I had Adrian call the dude I was with at the time, we'll call him Brody. So I'm like, listen, the only way I'm putting this saw down is if you get Brody up here right now. As soon as he gets here, I'll put it down. So he's like, all right, cool. And that's what we did. And as soon as I saw Brody, I was like, I felt this instant sigh of relief. This was somebody I trusted. This was who I was with every day. And it was like, I could feel relief. I felt protected again. I felt like there was somebody there that had my back. So, and that's how I left. And he also thought it was funny when he got there. So that just kind of speaks to the level of crazy that we were living on, where, you know, this is funny to them and this is kind of like, oh, no big deal. Like, this is normal, you know, in like that world. And I wish I could say that that was a rock bottom for me, but that wasn't my rock bottom, and that wasn't even close. This was just the beginning of me entering meth psychoses. So I started, and I didn't know that's what they were called until I got into a hospital one time and they diagnosed me and kind of explained to me what it was. That's the only time I felt relief, because prior to that, I was sort of going on these trips, and that's what they call it. That's what they call it, is, oh, you're tripping, like, oh, you're tripping, you're tripping, you're tripping. And it's like played down to be like not a big deal at all. But it actually can be a really big deal, and it can get you in these really dangerous situations, because like, for instance, on a day that I'm not tripping in that way, but somebody else, the switch goes off in their head, and now we're in danger because they are on that sort of level. So it's always like you're in these highly unpredictable situations. You always have to be ready for the worst. You're always living in kind of like an increased sense of your you're always like hyper aware of your surroundings, just because the nature of what that drug does. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about it, because this wasn't an uncommon thing. Like, I remember some of my most embarrassing moments would be, you know, I'm talking to a tree. I'm also seeing shadow people. I'm hearing voices from the ceiling, like commenting on what I'm doing as I'm doing it. And I remember a few times, for the most part, I was just far too embarrassed or humiliated to admit out loud that I was having these sort of, like it said on the online article, these are visual and auditory hallucinations. But if you're not from that world and you're not used to using that drug, or even if, like in my case, I had been in that world for several years, this wasn't something that people were like openly admitting or talking about. It was just something that people dealt with and they kept inside. I remember sitting around and smoking and just being like, dude, I'm hearing like 5 different people talking nonstop all the time. It's like they're just talking just in the distance. I can never see them. I can never actually catch them, but I can hear like everything they're saying. And they're always just talking shit about what I'm doing as I'm doing it. And they looked at me like I was out of my fucking mind. Like they just thought that was just like out there, you know? And I remember that being like the last time I ever brought it up. And but sometimes you could tell I was going through it because I would just go, you know, lay on a bed and just put the covers right over here, just like over my ears, just trying to block out all that noise. But it was coming from within my own mind, so I was never able to block it out. But, you know, you could just tell I was going through it when I would do stuff like that, or I would argue back with these invisible voices, or I would be outside, you know, actually having a conversation with an inanimate object. And did I say that word right? With like a tree, you know, I'm sitting here talking to the tree. I'm convinced that there is somebody inside that tree and they are talking to me and I am talking to them. You know, these were some of my more embarrassing, like out there moments when I was on that drug. But at the time, like, I didn't care. This was my perceived reality. This is what I was really experiencing. So it was real to me, even though it wasn't real in the sense of it was actually happening. I know this sounds crazy to say. And the reason I also want to talk about it is because there's so many times when a random person would help me or try to help me, and then I would lash out on them. And I just want people to, you know, if you're a good Samaritan or you have a loved one or you're also struggling with addiction and so you're constantly surrounded by other people in addiction and in that world, I want people to go into the situation with your eyes wide open, because the longer somebody uses and the more they use, the more often these type of situations happen. At least it did for me. And the more often it happens, the more often it doesn't end well. You know, things escalate, people go to prison, people die, people end up in the psych ward. It's just, there isn't like a happy ending to it. And so I just think if you want to help somebody, that's great. But like, maybe somebody isn't well versed in drug addiction. You aren't well versed in that world, and you think like, this person is helpless, or this person is just like out there, they're harmless, you know, they're just hurting themselves. Well, it's not necessarily the case. You may be reaching out to help them, but it may not be well received. And with just one flip of a switch in their mind, they can go from normal to psycho. And I want people to know that addiction isn't a pretty thing. It's ruthless, it's gruesome, it's gritty, it's really gritty, and it's messy. And addiction doesn't care, you know, that you're just there with good intentions. The other thing I just want to say before I wrap it up is, if you are struggling with addiction, if you're in that homicidal headspace, and you know what I'm talking about, I urge you to immediately seek help, because that is not something that you want to go through alone, and it's not safe to go through alone. And I only went through it alone because I didn't know there was a help for that, and I didn't know there was a name for that. So I just wanted to bring this up and and say that there is a name for it. It is a normal thing to go through, especially if you're injecting large amounts of meth into your system. This is a normal thing, and there is help for it, and there is treatment for it, and there is hope, and nobody is beyond getting help. If you want help, help is available. So I just think that's really important to not downplay it and to not make it like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, you'll never catch me being like the cool parent that's like, oh yeah, you guys can just go hang out and do whatever. Like, no, I'm gonna make sure that I know what you're up to, because there were so many times when I was at the house of a cool parent and some really bad shit went down. So I don't think it's an appropriate thing to kind of turn your head, look the other way, and just hope for the best and hope that, oh, well, it's under my roof, so they're being safe. No, because it's under your roof, you're allowing them to kind of run wild, and that is only going to exacerbate the problem. In my personal experience, that's what always happened, was there was little to no consequences, so that tricked you into believing that there was nothing wrong, you know? Success is a horrible teacher. The more things you get away with that there is no consequence, the more that kind of teaches you, oh, I'm good at this, like this is my thing, I'm special, like I have a gift, you know, I'm gonna be like a new breed of evil, I'm gonna specialize in this, I'm gonna specialize in that, and this is what I was meant to do. But when you start getting arrested and, you know, people end up dead, or you go to prison, or your best friend goes to prison, you start to become aware that maybe this isn't going to end well. And I can't tell you a single person I know that is still in their addiction and that has a successful life, that feels like they have meaning and purpose and fulfillment in their life. I can show you what those people look like today, and they're behind bars, or they're dead, or they are still using out in the desert in a shed somewhere trying to outsmart this thing. So this was a hard video to make, and I hope that somebody out there, I hope you get it. I hope you understand that you're not weird. You're not beyond help. You know, even if you get clean and you're still hearing voices, that's normal too. When I was in rehab, I was clean for, I think, almost an entire week before I stopped having this psychosis that I was talking about today, before the voices just shut off one day. But just keep with it. If you want help, help is available. I can't stress that enough. I just mostly want to say that you can't receive help unless you reach out and let somebody know what's actually going on within, you know, your inner struggle, what's going on within your head, how you're feeling, what you're actually struggling with, until you open up about that. Even if you just want to open up with it on a small scale. Like for me, when I discovered that's what this was, and I felt myself going into that really, really dark headspace, I walked straight, I think it was like 3 miles to the nearest hospital, and I just went in the front desk. I had no insurance, no ID, nothing, and I just said, I need to get checked out, I'm feeling homicidal. And I wasn't saying it in like a joking way, I was saying it like, if you don't lock me up tonight, I'm really gonna hurt somebody, and I'm not gonna be able to come back from that. And I felt that, I really felt that from deep within. I felt that I was going in that really unsafe space because I'd been there before and I knew what it felt like. And I had also known other people and used with other people that went to those extremes. And so I also want to just say, if you have taken somebody's life, you can even come back from that. I mean, I'm not here to judge anybody, and I know if there are people in the Bible, for instance, there's an example in the Bible about Paul, who he was a murderer, he killed people, he repented, he was forgiven. It's not like It's not like there isn't help. It's not like there isn't hope. It's not like you can't change. You can't turn your life around. You can't turn your life over. But you have to actually be sorry for what you've done. You have to be willing to do anything and everything it takes to turn yourself into a new creation, into an entirely different person. You have to be willing to live not just for your own wants and desires, but for what you were put here to do, you know. And so I just want to emphasize that no matter how dark things get, no matter how violent you become, there is always hope that you can change and you can do better and you can have a different life. You can have the good life, you know, like we used to joke about when we were using, like, God, there's just got to be something better. There's got to be a good life. I remember I used to love that song. I can't think of the words now. It was basically like, it's got to be something better than this. There's got to be a good life. There's got to be a good life. And there is a good life, and there is life after addiction, and life in recovery is possible, and it can be beautiful, and it can be very difficult, but I find it so worth it because the high highs in my recovery are so much better than the high highs I had in my addiction, which were just false, and they felt great in the moment until I realized that I could actually do better and feel better and be better. And I want that for more people, and I hope that for more people. And I just want to say that if I can get better, I believe anybody can get better. I was discarded as the lowest of the low, a bottom feeder, a junkie, you know, I was called all these different names, and so many people gave up on me, but I didn't quit on myself. I quit in the moment many times, but I decided that I was done, and when I started to work on myself, that's when I started to see change. When I started to address these really difficult memories and issues and things that I had gone through, that's when I started to make progress, and I started to be able to be forgiven and forgive myself for the things that I had done. And so no matter what, always don't give up on people. Don't lose hope. Nobody is beyond being helped and saved, and anybody deserves a second chance. Anybody deserves a chance at changing. So with that, let's end with one of my favorite quotes, and I will see you guys next week.